joining us now, founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and host of the Independent Americans podcast, Paul Rieckhoff, not our senior White House correspondent. No. Paul, really good to have you. Okay, Pete Hegseth. For a while, it looked like there was no way he would survive this process, and then things calmed down. We heard Joni Ernst say nicer things about him. It seemed like the road was getting smoother, but then you just heard there John Barrasso, who is the whip, not exactly say that he's got the votes. What is your prediction?
I think train wreck, chaos, mayhem is right for what we're about to go into. Vacation time is definitely over, and here comes the mayhem. I think most people are keeping their powder dry. I think that's what they're doing. They're saying the things that can keep them in good graces with Trump or keeping them kind of off the radar and waiting to see what comes out, not just in the hearings, but in the next 48 hours and what could happen after the hearings. Because it doesn't look like he'll get a vote immediately after the hearings. So we're talking about maybe another week of breaking news, of people who could come out, of whistleblowers, and some talk that the FBI investigation may not be complete, right? Maybe they haven't talked to some folks who do want to talk. So those folks might come forward to the committee. They might come forward to the press. So I think everybody's keeping their powder dry and waiting to see what happens. But expect fireworks. I think Hegseth wants to set the tone for the Trump administration. That's why I think they also want to put him up first. He considers himself a fighter. He's a culture warrior. In my view, he's woefully disqualified for a number of reasons. But he wants to set the tone and set the pace and put the Democrats on the defense.
How important is it to have a Secretary of Defense in place on day one?
Tremendously important on everything from a potential peace deal in the Middle East to the wildfires in California. This is what used to be called the Secretary of War. This is, in my view, the most important member of the cabinet. It should also be the least political member of the cabinet. And I think that's why Hegseth is ultimately facing so much resistance, because he has been so hyper-partisan. He has been extreme in his political views on women, on gays, on many other folks that are going to be adversely affected in the most diverse workforce on the planet. So 2 million people are going to be under his purview. And if he's not in place, we're going to have a gap. And that's going to be, in my view, a national security risk.
If he gets rejected or he gets polled, how long would it take to do the whole process over with a new nominee?
It depends on who he picks. I mean, if he picks a retired general who could get through quickly, or someone like Joni Ernst that's more moderate, I think it could go quickly. If he picks another Fox News host or someone that's outside the Beltway, I think it could take longer. I think it's important to recognize none of this is normal. We're talking about whether or not he clears an FBI check. That was never an issue for Lloyd Austin, for Bob Gates, for Dick Cheney. And that's the primary concern we've got right now, which cuts to the core of his character, his fitness, and even his stability, whether or not we can trust him not to drink while he's on the job. This is not normal by any means. And I think it's important that we recognize that going into all these nominations.
So what happens if there is no defense secretary in place? Who's in charge of the Pentagon come Monday if there's not somebody confirmed?
The acting, probably. I mean, they'll have an acting secretary in place.
Could Donald Trump elevate an acting that's already been Senate confirmed? Anybody within the ranks?
I think he would have to, right? I mean, I don't know, to be honest with you, technically, but I think he's not going to keep Lloyd Austin. Maybe he would. I think that would be the sensible thing to do in terms of continuity, but he's been so hard on Austin.
What about CQ?
I mean, CQ Brown's been rumored to be gone, too. I think Trump wants to clear them all out. I don't think he's going to waste any time, and he'll go pretty far down the list until he can find someone who's a loyalist and who's reliable and who can start to execute his pretty radical agenda for the country that starts with the Pentagon. I think that's important for everybody to understand. It starts with the Pentagon. VA is also up next tomorrow. Collins is nominated for VA Secretary, which is getting almost no oversight. Think about how we used to talk about how sacred our obligation was to our veterans. Nobody's even vetting this guy, and it looks like he's going to go through with a check mark. So there's a lot of flooding the zone happening right now, and I think it's a test of the press. It's definitely a test of the Democrats, and, of course, a test of any reasonable Republicans, too.
All right, Paul Rieckhoff, thank you very much.
Thank you.